The evolution of cinema. Level B. 2. Upper intermediate. The birth of moving pictures. Cinema, or the movies, as most people call it, is one of the most influential art forms ever created. It combines storytelling, visual art, music, and technology into one powerful experience. But the road to modern cinema was long and full of experiments, accidents, and dreams. The story begins in the late 19th century. Back then, people had already invented photography, but photographs could only capture a single frozen moment. Scientists and inventors started asking themselves a revolutionary question. What if pictures could move? In 1895, the Lumière brothers from France presented a short film called Workers Leaving the Lumière Factory. It was less than a minute long, showing people walking out of a building, yet the audience was amazed. Some even jumped out of their seats when they saw a train coming toward the camera in another Lumière film. They had never seen anything like it before. Soon after, filmmakers across the world started experimenting with storytelling. They realized they could use this new invention not only to record reality, but also to create imaginary worlds, silent films, and the language of images. The first 30 years of cinema were silent. There was no synchronized sound. Actors had to express everything through their faces, gestures, and body language. Music was usually played live in the theater to add emotion. One of the biggest stars of the silent era was Charlie Chaplin. His character, the poor but kind little tramp, made people laugh and cry without saying a single word. Chaplin's films, such as City Lights and Modern Times, showed that movies could mix humor with deep social messages. During this time, filmmakers also learned how to speak visually. They invented editing, close-ups, and camera movement. Directors like D.W. Corder, Griffith, and Sergei Eisenstein developed new ways to build tension, emotion, and rhythm. Using only images, the silent era created the foundation for all modern cinema. Even today, directors study silent films to understand how powerful visual storytelling can be. The arrival of sound. In 1927, everything changed with the release of The Jazz Singer, the first feature film with synchronized dialogue and music. For the first time, audiences could hear actors speak. It was a technological miracle and a cultural shock. Some silent film stars couldn't adapt because their voices didn't match their on-screen image. Others found new success. Sound opened the door to musicals, more realistic drama, and a whole new kind of comedy. Studios had to rebuild everything: microphones, cameras, and theaters. The talkies, as they were called, quickly replaced silent films. By 1930, the silent era was officially over. The Golden Age of Hollywood. The 1,930 seconds to 1,950 seconds are often called the Golden Age of Hollywood. During this time, the film industry became a dream factory. Major studios like MGM, Paramount, and Warner Brothers dominated the market. They created stars, built huge film sets, and produced hundreds of movies every year. Audiences went to the cinema as a social event. It was cheap, glamorous, and exciting. This period gave the world timeless classics such as Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, and The Wizard of Oz. Hollywood also developed a clear visual and emotional language. Romantic dramas, westerns, musicals, and film noir became standard genres. Directors like Alfred Hitchcock, Orson Welles, and Billy Wilder turned cinema into a serious art form. Cinema around the world. While Hollywood was rising, other countries were building their own film traditions. In Japan, directors like Akira Kurosawa combined epic storytelling with strong moral questions. In Italy, the neo-realist movement used real locations and non-professional actors to show post-war life with honesty and compassion. In France, the new wave of the 1,950 seconds and 1,960 seconds broke old rules of storytelling, using jump cuts and natural dialogue. In India, Bollywood began creating colorful, music-filled movies that celebrated love, family, and tradition. Cinema was becoming a global language, one that didn't always need words. The magic of color. In the early days, all movies were black and white. Color existed but was expensive and difficult to use. By the 1940 seconds, however, Technicolor technology allowed studios to shoot in bright, beautiful colors. Audiences were amazed by the rich reds and blues of The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. Color made movies feel more real and emotional, giving directors new creative freedom. Still, some filmmakers chose to stay with black and white for artistic reasons, to create a timeless, dramatic atmosphere. Even today, black and white films appear from time to time as a tribute to the early masters. The age of innovation and new voices. By the 1950 seconds and 1960 seconds, cinema had truly become a universal form of art. The world was changing, and so was the way people told stories. Filmmakers began to explore deeper human emotions, question social norms, and experiment with technology in ways no one had tried before. After World War II, audiences were hungry for new ideas. The horrors of war had changed how people saw life, love, and morality. Filmmakers around the world started to ask difficult questions. What does it mean to be human? How do we deal with guilt, loss, or freedom? These questions gave rise to new cinematic movements that shaped the future of storytelling. European revolutions in film. In France, young directors like François Truffaut, Jean-Luc Godard, and Agnès Varda led the Nouvelle Vague, or French New Wave. They wanted to break free from the strict rules of traditional filmmaking. Instead of shooting in studios, they filmed on real streets. Instead of polished dialogue, they used spontaneous, natural conversations. Their movies felt alive, personal, emotional, and unpredictable. One of the most famous examples is Breathless, 1960, by Jean-Luc Godard. It broke almost every cinematic rule, using jump cuts and handheld cameras, yet it became a symbol of artistic freedom. This movement inspired young directors everywhere, showing that anyone with a camera and an idea could make a film that mattered. At the same time, Italian directors like Federico Fellini and Michelangelo Antonioni created poetic, dreamlike films that explored loneliness and identity. In Sweden, Ingmar Bergman asked philosophical questions about faith and death, while in Britain, the Angry Young Men movement told stories about working-class frustration. Europe had become a laboratory of ideas, a place where film could be art, protest, and poetry all at once. The birth of the blockbuster. Across the ocean, Hollywood was also going through a transformation. By the late 1960 seconds, the old studio system was collapsing. Audiences were no longer satisfied with formulaic stories about heroes and happy endings. A new generation of filmmakers, often called the New Hollywood, emerged. Directors like Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas grew up watching European art films and wanted to combine that creativity with American storytelling. The result was a new wave of ambitious, emotional, and visually powerful films. In the 1970 seconds, masterpieces like The Godfather, Taxi Driver, Jaws, and Star Wars changed cinema forever. These movies combined complex characters, advanced technology, and unforgettable music. Jaws 1975 is often considered the first blockbuster, a movie so popular that people lined up around the block to see it. Star Wars 1977 took audiences to galaxies far, far away, creating a global pop culture phenomenon that still continues today. Blockbusters became the new model of success, but they also raised questions. Was cinema becoming more about money than art? Could small emotional stories still survive in the age of spectacle? New technologies, new worlds. The 1980 seconds and 1990 seconds brought an explosion of technology that changed how movies were made and watched. Special effects became more sophisticated, soundtracks more powerful, and storytelling more dynamic. Digital editing replaced film splicing, allowing directors to cut and rearrange scenes with greater precision. Animators at Pixar created the first fully computer-generated feature film, Toy Story 1995, opening a new era for animation. At the same time, visual effects in Jurassic Park 1993 and The Matrix 1999 amazed audiences and redefined what was possible on screen. Suddenly, dinosaurs could walk among humans, and people could bend the laws of reality. But not everything was about technology. The 1990 seconds also saw a rise in independent cinema, smaller films made outside the studio system. Directors like Quentin Tarantino, Pulp Fiction, Richard Linklater, Before Sunrise, and Sofia Coppola, The Virgin Suicides, told personal, character-driven stories. Their success proved that audiences still craved authenticity and emotion, not just explosions and special effects. The globalization of film. Meanwhile, the rest of the world was no longer just watching Hollywood. It was creating its own stars and stories. In China, directors such as Zhang Yimou and Ang Lee created visually stunning films that mixed traditional culture with modern themes. In Mexico, the Three Amigos, Guillermo del Toro, Alfonso Cuarón, and Alejandro González Iñárritu brought a new emotional intensity to world cinema. Their success in Hollywood later opened the door for other international voices. In South Korea, the film industry experienced a creative boom, with directors like Bong Joon-ho, whose Parasite 2019 would later make history by winning the Oscar for Best Picture. The rise of Korean, Indian, and African cinema showed that storytelling is truly universal, and that every culture has something powerful to share with the world. The digital revolution. At the beginning of the 21st century, the entire film industry changed again, this time faster than ever before. Digital cameras replaced traditional film, and editing became fully computerized. Filmmakers no longer needed expensive film rolls or giant studios to tell their stories. Independent creators could now make movies on smaller budgets and still achieve professional results. Even a good digital camera and a laptop with editing software could produce a film that looked cinematic. One of the first major digital films was Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones, 2002, which was shot entirely on digital cameras. Soon, everyone followed. The change was not just about technology, it was about accessibility. Filmmaking became more democratic. Now, anyone with talent, passion, and vision could tell their story whether they lived in Los Angeles, Lagos, or Lima. The rise of CGI and visual wonders. With the growth of computers came an explosion of CGI computer-generated imagery. What once required hundreds of people building physical sets could now be done inside a computer. Films like Avatar 2009, The Avengers series, and Inception 2010 pushed the limits of imagination. Audiences could travel to alien worlds, experience dreams within dreams, or watch entire cities fold in on themselves. However, not everyone was happy. Some critics said that CGI made films lose their human touch, that movies were becoming too focused on visual spectacle rather than emotional storytelling. But the best directors found balance. They used technology to enhance, not replace, the human experience. Movies like Gravity, Interstellar, and Mad Max Fury Road showed that visual effects could serve powerful emotional stories when used wisely. The streaming revolution. Then came the internet. At first, people watched movies on DVDs and television, but streaming platforms soon changed everything. Services like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus, and HBO Max made films instantly accessible to millions of viewers around the world. You no longer needed to go to a cinema to see new releases. You could watch them from your couch, on your phone, or even during a flight. The idea of cinema started to expand. For filmmakers, streaming was both an opportunity and a challenge. On one hand, they could reach global audiences more easily than ever. On the other hand, the flood of content made it harder for individual films to stand out. At the same time, the rise of YouTube, TikTok, and other platforms blurred the line between film and video. Short films, documentaries, and even amateur creations began finding massive audiences. The internet gave everyone a voice, and cinema became a conversation rather than a one-way performance. The power of diversity and representation. As the industry grew more connected, so did its understanding of the world. Filmmakers began to realize that cinema should represent everyone, not just a few voices or cultures. Stories about women, minorities, and marginalized groups gained recognition and critical acclaim. Films like Moonlight, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Black Panther showed how diversity could bring new energy and authenticity to storytelling. Audiences, too, demanded change. They wanted stories that reflected the complexity of modern life. Stories about identity, mental health, climate change, and technology. The new generation of filmmakers listened. Cinema was no longer just entertainment. It became a mirror of our collective consciousness. The pandemic and the reinvention of moviegoing. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, cinemas around the world closed their doors. For the first time in history, the global film industry paused. Productions stopped, premieres were delayed, and audiences stayed home. But the crisis also brought innovation. Directors experimented with remote filming, digital festivals, and new distribution models. Streaming became the lifeline for the entire industry. When theaters finally reopened, something had changed. People realized how much they missed the collective experience, laughing, crying, and gasping together in the dark. The cinema was not dead. It had simply evolved once again. The future of cinema. So where is cinema going next? Artificial intelligence, virtual production, and immersive technologies like VR, virtual reality, and AR augmented reality are already shaping the next chapter. Tools such as Unreal Engine allow filmmakers to build entire digital worlds before shooting even begins. Yet, no matter how advanced the technology becomes, the heart of cinema will always stay the same. Storytelling, movies connect people. They let us see through another person's eyes, understand other cultures, and feel emotions we might never experience ourselves. Whether it's a black and white silent film or a holographic projection in the future, cinema will continue to explore what it means to be human. As legendary director Martin Scorsese once said, "Cinema is a matter of what's in the frame and what's out." That frame, the magic window between reality and imagination, still has infinite possibilities. Final thoughts. From the Lumiere brothers' simple factory scene to the breathtaking worlds of Avatar, cinema has come an incredible distance in just over a century. It has survived wars, revolutions, pandemics, and digital transformations, always changing, always adapting. Each era brought new challenges and new voices. Each filmmaker added their own brushstroke to the grand canvas of moving images. The evolution of cinema is, in a way, the evolution of humanity itself. Our dreams, fears, and hopes projected onto a screen. And as long as there are stories to tell, the lights will dim, the screen will glow, and somewhere in the dark, someone will whisper, "Let's begin the movie."